I don't even know if this makes me the bad guy, but if checking a security alert on a phone that's literally synced to my own account is snooping, then fine, I'm a snoop. Whatever. I was in the garage, just trying to deal with these 3 plastic bins of holiday stuff and some old tools. And I just wanted like 10 minutes of peace because my kids have been driving me insane about the Wi-Fi. Just 10 minutes. Anyway, my phone buzzes. It's 3:14 a.m. I'm still half asleep in some old oversized t-shirt, and I see a ring notification motion detected at the side gate. We live in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing happens at 3 a.m. I open the app and the footage is grainy, but it's clearly my husband, Mark. He isn't coming home as leaving. He's sneaking out the side gate, looking over his shoulder, and walking toward the car. He didn't even turn the headlights on until he was halfway down the street. I stood there for a minute in the garage, staring at the screen. I wasn't even sad yet. I was mostly just annoyed, like, great. I have to deal with some weird midlife crisis on top of everything else. I still have to go to Home Depot today because the furnace filter was disgusting. It looked like someone had been smoking cigars inside the vents for 6 months. Obviously, I'm the only one in this house who even knows filters exist. The next morning, I'm in the kitchen doing the usual thing, scooping some collagen powder into my coffee. Mark walks in looking totally normal. He kisses my cheek and asks if we have any more of those Greek yogurt cups. Did you go for a drive last night? I ask. He doesn't even blink. No, why? The camera caught you leaving at 3:15, I say. He just shrugs. Oh yeah, I couldn't sleep. I just drove around the block to clear my head. Didn't want to wake you up, he said it so casually. Like it's normal for a 49-year-old man to sneak out of his own house like a teenager. I didn't argue or scream. I just watched him eat his yogurt and felt like I was losing my mind. Later that afternoon, the house is a total disaster. My teenagers are screaming at each other because the router is acting up again. I'm rushing around, trying to find a gift bag for my cousin Sarah's baby shower, and I see Mark's phone sitting on the kitchen island. He was in the shower. His phone was connected to the car in the garage. And since we share enough account for the photos and calendar, a notification pops up on the iPad I'm using for the grocery list. It's a message from a contact saved as Mike Plumbing. We don't have any plumbing issues. The pipes are fine. And Mike Plumbing is texting at 2 p.m. on a Saturday? Who the hell schedules a plumber for a Saturday afternoon? Unless the house is flooding. I didn't call him, I just opened Life360. We all have it, the kids mask. Me, it's for safety. Which is basically just me, making sure the kids aren't at some party they aren't supposed to be at. I clicked on Mark's icon. He wasn't at the house or the gym. He was at a residential address about 15 minutes away in a neighborhood I never even been to. So I'm standing there with the iPad, looking at this little blue dot on a map, and I just start getting angry. The one who handles everything, the filters, the supplements, fixing the router while everyone is yelling and here is this blue dot sitting in a driveway that isn't ours. I drove there. I didn't even change. I just threw a cardigan over my leggings and left. I parked a house down and just watched. A woman comes out of the house. She's younger, maybe 30, and looked way too put together. Mark walks out behind her. He doesn't kiss her or even touch her. He just hands her a manila envelope. A manila envelope. That's the part that felt weird. If it was just an affair, I could deal with that. I've seen the movies. But this looked like a business transaction. He looked nervous. Kept checking his watch, like he was delivering a payment or some legal document. I drove home and got dressed for the baby shower. Put on my makeup, did my hair, and acted like I hadn't just spent my Saturday afternoon spying on my husband. At the shower, everyone is sipping mimosas and talking about diaper brands. Sarah is glowing in this big decorated chair, and Mark is standing next to me, chatting with my brother about sports. He's being the perfect husband. Laughing, attentive, totally believable. Then Sarah's phone, which was sitting on the gift table, lights up. She isn't looking at it, but I am. It's a Venmo notification. Someone just sent her 1-200. The caption says, "For the consultation, thanks again. The account that sent the money isn't Mark's. I know his Venmo." This was an account I'd never seen, but the profile picture was a photo of a golden retriever. I look over at Mark. He's still smiling at my brother. Then I remember something. 2 weeks ago, I was cleaning out the glove box of Mark's car to make room for some napkins, and I found a piece of mail. It was a bank statement for an account I didn't recognize. Not a joint account, not even in his name. It was addressed to a Marcus Thorne. I didn't think much of it then. I just figured the mailman messed up, and I tossed it back in the glove box. I lean over to Mark and whisper, "Who is Marcus Thorne?" Mark stops talking mid-sentence. He doesn't look at me. He just stares at my brother, and his face goes completely blank. "What are you talking about?" he asks. "The bank statement in your car," I say, "and the manila envelope you delivered today." The room is loud. People are laughing. Music is playing. Sarah is talking about nursery colors. Mark just stands there frozen. "I don't know what you're talking about, Yvonne," he says. I don't make a scene in front of my cousin. I just reach into my purse, pull out my phone, and show him the screenshot of the Life360 map from earlier. He looks at the screen, then looks at me. He doesn't deny it. He doesn't even try to lie this time. He just sighs and takes a sip of his mimosa. "We need to go home," he says. I didn't move. I stood there for a minute, looking at the Venmo notification on Sarah's phone, wondering why the hell my husband is paying my cousin $1,200 through a fake identity. I walked over to the gift table, picked up Sarah's phone and slid it across the table toward Mark. "Explain this," I said. Mark went dead silent for a good minute. He just stared at Sarah's phone on the table, then looked at me. He didn't even try to grab it. Everyone else at the party was still laughing and talking, totally oblivious to the fact that my life was falling apart right there. "We're leaving," I said. I kept it together, though my heart was hammering. I walked over to Sarah, gave her a fake smile, and told her we had a family emergency. I practically dragged Mark out to the car. The ride home was silent. I couldn't even look at him. As soon as we hit the driveway, he stopped the car and turned to me. "Yvonne, look, it's not what it looks like. It's not an affair. I swear on the kids' lives." "Then what the hell is this? Mark? Who is Marcus Thorne? And why is my cousin getting $1,200 from some random account?" He rubbed his face, looking completely exhausted. He told me he'd met this guy, Curtis Underwood, a consultant who does alternative wealth management. Apparently, Curtis set everything up, the account, the fake identity, the whole thing. Mark claimed it was just a legal loophole to move money without triggering tax flags. A legal loophole involves a fake name and paying my cousin. Sarah was in debt, he said. She didn't want to tell the family. Curtis told me the Thorne account was the way to do it without it looking like a gift on my taxes. I just provided the money. He sounded sincere. That's the thing about Mark, he can sound like the most honest man in the world even when he's lying. "And the manila envelope?" I asked. He said they were just documents for the account that needed to be notarized. I didn't believe a word of it. I didn't even argue. I just got out of the car and went inside. "You okay, honey?" he asked. "I'm trying to get the internet to work, Mark." "Just give me a second," I told him. I didn't look at him, just kept hitting the reset button on the router. The next morning I was in the kitchen making coffee when I noticed Mark's iPad on the counter. He'd left it unlocked. He's usually obsessive about passwords, but he'd been so stressed lately that he'd just left a browser tab open. I didn't go hunting for messages or affair keywords. I just checked the history. There was a website open. It wasn't a bank. It was a public record search for some small town in Ohio. He had been searching for a name, Eleanor Thorne. I felt sick to my stomach. Marcus Thorne wasn't just a random name. He was using a dead person's identity. I felt a wave of nausea, but I forced myself to stay calm. I went into the garage, my mind racing. I needed to change the furnace filter, Sid noticed. Yesterday they were filthy, and the house was starting to smell like dust. I drove to Home Depot and spent 20 minutes wandering the aisles, barely paying attention to where I was, before I finally found the right size. When I got back, Mark was in the living room. His phone was on the coffee table and it buzzed, a text from Curtis Underwood. I waited until Mark went into the bathroom. Then I grabbed it. He's lazy with his princesses, the same 4 digits for everything I was in. The messages were blunt. Curtis said the transfer to the second account was done, and that the consultation fee had to be sent by Friday, or the paperwork was going to the ERS. Then another message, "Doesn't matter. You're too deep in now. Mark, just tell her it's a business. Venture Friday, same as always. Or I just send the Thorne files to the ERS, and we can both see how the audit goes. Your choice." I just stared at the screen. It wasn't an affair, it was fraud. He wasn't just helping Sarah, he was using a fake identity to hide money, and this Curtis guy was blackmailing him. I didn't panic. I just screenshotted the whole conversation, sent it to myself, and put the phone back exactly where I found it. Then I went back to the garage to change that filter. When I pulled the old one out, it was so disgusting. I actually gagged. I stood there for a minute, holding this piece of filthy cardboard, thinking about how my husband was being squeezed by some guy named Curtis. It was absurd. I'm worrying about the fax system, and my husband is basically a criminal. 2 days later, I was on my laptop organizing family photos using our shared iCloud. I noticed a folder in the hidden section. I opened it. No photos of other women, just documents. Passports, social security cards, licenses, all for Marcus Thorne, but the photos on the IDs were different people. Some old men, some younger. He was cycling through them. There was also a photo of a contracta partnership agreement between Marcus Thorne and Underwood Financial. I started digging through the shared emails for Underwood. I found a thread from 6 months ago. Curtis Wansant, some consultant. He was a former employee at the firm where Mark worked 10 years ago. He'd been fired for embezzlement, and it looked like he'd found a way back into Mark's life. He hadn't just met Mark, he'd trapped him. I was sitting there, the blue light of the screen hitting my face, when the garage door opener stopped working. I pressed the button. Nothing. I walked out to the garage and realized the sensor was blocked by a piece of cardboard from the filter packaging ID left on the floor. I moved the box and the door finally groaned shut. I went back inside. Mark was in the kitchen making a sandwich. He looked at me and smiled. "You seem quiet today," he said. "I'm just thinking about the budget." I lied. "Everything's fine, Yvonne, I'm handling it." "Are you?" I didn't say anything else. I just walked over to the counter, picked up the iPad, and slid it across the granite toward him. The screen was on the screenshot of the message from Curtis about the ears and the audit. Mark stopped chewing. He looked at the screen, then looked at me. He didn't move. He didn't even swallow the food in his mouth. I leaned against the counter and crossed my arms. Who is Curtis Underwood, really? Mark just stared at the iPad. He looked pale. He didn't answer. He just stood there with his half-eaten sandwich. Mark was standing there with his sandwich. He didn't even chew. He just stared at the iPad, looked at me, and then finally swallowed. He looked like he was actually struggling to get the food down. "Look, it's not what you think," he said. I told him I was looking at a text about being too deep in, and someone threatening to call the ERS. I asked him who Curtis was, and what the Thorne files were. He put the sandwich down on the counter. No plate, just right there on the granite. He leaned back and sighed, doing that thing where he acts like he's the one being wronged. "Curtis was mentor Yvonne from years ago. He saw a way to handle our assets better," he said. "It started small with some transfers to avoid taxes. Then he mentioned this Thorne identity. Apparently, Marcus Thorne was some guy who died in the 90s with no heirs. Curtis had the paperwork to reactivate the estate to hold funds. I asked him if reactivating an estate was just a fancy word for identity theft. I told him he was stealing a dead man's life to hide money. "It's not stealing if the money is ours," he snapped. I didn't even know how to respond. The logic was warped. I didn't scream. I stood there for a minute and watched him. "Wait, was it Tuesday? No, Monday." "It had to be Monday. How much?" I asked. He said he didn't know. Mark. "How much?" "Maybe 200,000 over a few years." I felt like I was going to throw up. $200,000. We have a mortgage, 2 kids in high school, and my husband is playing some game with a random guy from the 90s. Then I asked about Sarah. I wanted to know why she was getting $1,200 from Marcus Thorne. He told me she was in trouble. Owed people. Real people. Not the ERS. He said Curtis told him the only way to get her the money, without it hitting our joint accounts, was to route it through Thorne. He kept claiming he was trying to help her out. I asked if he meant by committing more fraud. He didn't answer. He looked away. Eventually he left the room to take a walk and clear his head. That's his go-to move whenever he's caught. As soon as the door clicked, I went for the laptop. I didn't want his version of things. I wanted to see the actual proof. I opened the shared iCloud account. I knew there was more. You don't move that much money with one fake name and a couple of Venmo payments. I started digging through the folders, looking for spreadsheets. I found them in a folder called Work Stuff. 6 different spreadsheets. I opened the first one and saw it wasn't just Marcus Thorne. There was a Julian Vane, a Lawrence Reed, and a Silas Moore. Each name had a social security number, a birthday, and a list of accounts. I sat there staring at the screen. In the next room, the kids were screaming because the Wi-Fi was lagging. Our router has been acting up for weeks, and I keep forgetting to call the cable company. Honestly, that company is a joke. I spent 40 minutes on hold last month just to be told to restart the box, which I'd already done twice. The plastic casing on the router is also starting to yellow, which is just disgusting. "Mom, the internet is dead," Chloe yelled. "Fix it, Chloe," my son screamed back. I felt sick. I reached for my water, but my hand was shaking so bad I almost knocked the glass over. I went back to the files and found a PDF. It was a contract between Mark and Curtis Underwood. It wasn't some mentorship, it was a partnership. Mark was the operator. He handled the domestic transfers because he had a steady job and a clean record. Curtis was the architect. Mark was the boots on the ground. The consultation fees Curtis wanted weren't blackmail. They were a cut of the profits. Mark was paying him a percentage of the stolen money to keep him quiet. The garage door opened. Mark was back. I left the spreadsheet open on the screen. I didn't close it. I went into the kitchen and started doing the dishes. I didn't want to look at him, so I focused on the soap and the hot water. He walked in and stood there for a second. "I can fix this, Yvonne," he said. I asked him what he was fixing. "The part where Hez a criminal, or the part where Hez been lying for years?" "I did it for us, for the kids' college, for the house." "Don't you dare," I said. "Don't bring the kids into this to make yourself feel better. You did this because you liked it. You liked having a secret world where you were in control." He said that wasn't true. I didn't turn around. I kept scrubbing a pot. I asked him why there were 4 other dead people in the iCloud folder. Julian Vane, Lawrence Reed. I asked if they were assets too. He moved closer and tried to put his hand on my shoulder, but I stepped away. I couldn't stand him touching me. Mark said he was going to talk to Curtis. He'd tell him they were out and pay whatever was needed to delete the files. I asked him what money he was using. The money he stole from dead people? I asked if he thought the Urs would be okay with that. He didn't have an answer. The next few days were a blur. We acted normal for the kids. We had dinner, talked about school soccer, argued about the trash. But every time he entered a room, it felt like I was living with a stranger. I started doing weird, repetitive things to keep from screaming. I got obsessed with the house. I spent 3 hours organizing the pantry by expiration date. I scrubbed the baseboards with a toothbrush. But mostly I was tracking him. I used Life360 and checked the CarPlay logs. Our phones are synced to the car so I could see every address he'd navigated to. He'd tell me he was at the office, but the log showed he spent 2 hours at a up store 30 miles away. He'd say he was at the gym, but he'd actually been sitting in a strip mall parking lot for 45 minutes. He wasn't fixing anything. He was still meeting Curtis. He was still in it. Then Tuesday happened. I was in the laundry room, folding a mountain of towels. We have way too many towels. I don't know why we bought so many. And half of them aren't even the same shade white. And my phone buzzed. Life360 alert. Mark was moving toward that residential address again. The one where the woman had been. I didn't call him. I drove. I got there in 15 minutes and parked around the corner. I saw Mark's car in the driveway. I sat there and watched. 10 minutes later, Mark walked out of the house. He was with Curtis Underwood. I'd never seen him in person, but he looked like I imagined: slim, expensive suit and a fake-looking smile. They weren't fighting. They were laughing. Mark handed him a thick, padded envelope. I felt a massive wave of anger. He was still paying him. He was still lying. He was treating me like an idiot who just lived in his house and changed the air filters. I drove home. I didn't speed, I just drove the limit. When I got home, I went straight to the router and unplugged it. I put the power cord in the kitchen junk drawer. "Mom, the Wi-Fi is out again!" Chloe screamed. "On it!" I yelled back. I went into the bedroom and grabbed the iPad. I opened the shared iCloud and forwarded the work stuff folder to my brother. He's a CPA. He's the kind of guy who gets excited about tax audits. I emailed him and told him to tell me exactly how much of it was taxable and how much was a felony. I was staring at the trash can when Mark walked through the front door. He looked happy. He was humming some song. He walked up to me and tried to kiss my forehead. "Hey, honey," he said. "Rough day at the office. I'm exhausted." I didn't move. I didn't even look at him. I picked up the iPad and slid it across the granite counter. The screen was showing the email I'd sent to my brother. Mark stopped humming. He looked at the screen, then at me. "Why did you send that to your brother?" he asked. "Because he's better at math than you are," I said. "He said we could talk about it, that we could figure it out." I told him. I already figured it out. He wasn't providing for us. He was stealing from dead people. He didn't argue. He stood there looking at the iPad. And then he looked at the junk drawer where the router cord was. "The internet is down," he said. "I know," I said. I walked past him into the garage and started grabbing boxes of stuff. I stopped at the edge of the driveway and looked at the house. Then I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. "Hi, this is Yvonne Kelly," I said. "I need a lawyer. My husband has some fraud issues he needs to deal with." I hung up. Mark was still standing in the kitchen doorway, just watching me. I didn't say anything. I picked up another box and started dragging it out. I just kept moving those boxes, one by one, dragging them out to the driveway. Mark stayed in the kitchen doorway for a long time, just watching me. He didn't try to stop me, but he didn't help either. He just stood there the next, up at 6 point. I did my usual thing in the kitchen. Made coffee, took that collagen powder I keep buying even though it tastes like fish. God, why do I keep buying the bulk bag? It's like drinking a melted sardine. I spent 5 minutes trying to scrub the residue off the whisk, because it just sticks to the metal. I was just stirring it in when I remembered the email from my brother. My brother David is a CPA. He lives for this kind of stuff. He doesn't just do taxes. He basically hunts for mistakes for fun. He'd emailed me back at 3:14 in the morning. Wait, was it 3:14? No, probably 3:41, something like that. The email was just a bulleted list. "No, hey sis, no, hope you're okay, just numbers." He told me that based on the spreadsheets, Mark hadn't just avoided some taxes. He'd basically built his own financial system. David found 3 separate offshore accounts that weren't even in the iCloud folder, but were mentioned in the work stuff sheets. The total amount of diverted money was closer to $400,000, not 200. Then he wrote, "The Thorne identity is a felony. The Vane and Reed identities are felonies. The way the money was routed through Sarah's account makes her a co-conspirator, whether she knew where it came from or not. You need a criminal defense attorney for him, and a scorched earth divorce attorney for you." I finished my coffee and went into the living room. Mark was on the sofa. He hadn't showered, and he looked like hell. "I talked to Curtis," Mark said, "and he says if we just wait another month he can move the remaining funds into a trust. That's untouchable. He says he can make the Thorne files disappear." I didn't even look at him. I just grabbed the iPad and shoved David's email in his face. "My brother found the other accounts, Mark. The ones you didn't put in the hidden folder. 400,000, not 200. Mark's face went blank. He didn't even have a lie ready. He just stared at the screen. "I didn't know about the other ones," he said. "Stop it," I said. "Just stop, I can't listen to you lie anymore, it's actually just boring." I went back to the kitchen and started messing with the junk drawer. I found a handful of dead AA batteries, and some old takeout menus from that Thai place that closed 2 years ago. I spent a good 10 minutes, wondering why I'd kept a menu for a restaurant that doesn't exist anymore. Just tossing things out to have something to do. While I was doing that, my phone buzzed. It was a life360 notification. Mark had left the house. I checked the map. He wasn't going to the office. He was heading toward that same residential area where I'd seen him with Curtis. I didn't follow him. I didn't need to. I already had the receipts. I just sat there on the kitchen floor and called Ms. Holloway, the lawyer I'd contacted the day before. "Yvonne," she said, "I've reviewed the documents. We have a very strong position, but we need to move fast before your husband decides to clean the accounts." "What do you mean clean them?" "He could transfer everything to a non-extradition country, or just wipe the digital trail," she said. "I want you to freeze the joint accounts immediately. I'll send the paperwork for an electronic signature once that's done, we file for divorce and notify the authorities. If you want to protect your own assets, we have to do this now." "I just want the money that belongs to us," I said. "And I want him out of the house." "We can do that, but be aware, once the Sears gets involved, they don't care about your divorce settlement. They want their cut first. I hung up and opened my banking app. I hit the freeze button on our joint savings and checking. It took about 10 seconds. I don't know, it just felt right. Like I was finally finishing a chore I'd been putting off for 10 years. While I was working, Mark came home. I could hear him in the hallway. Yvonne? Why is the joint account frozen? I didn't stop working on the doorframe. Because I'm not paying for your damn lawyer. Mark? He came into the room. He wasn't yelling, but he sounded desperate, which was almost worse. Look, we can fix this. I'll give you everything. I'll put the house in your name, just unfreeze the accounts, so I can pay Curtis to make the files go away. If those files hit the ears, we lose everything anyway. I already sent the files to David, I said. And David sent them to Miss Holloway. And Miss Holloway is currently talking to the DAS office. Mark stopped talking. He just stood there. I finally got the door to click shut perfectly. I stepped back and looked at the door, then looked at him. You're not paying Curtis another dime, I said. Because Curtis is just using you, and you were stupid enough to let him. Mark tried to move toward me, probably to grab the phone or the iPad, but I just stepped aside. He didn't touch me. He didn't have the nerve. He just slumped against the wall and put his head in his hands. What happens now? He asked. Now, I said. You figure out where you're going to sleep because I'm not sharing a bed with a man who steals from dead people the next 2 weeks were just a series of boring technical meetings. I spent a lot of time in Mrs. Holloway's office going through iCloud logs, CarPlay history, and spreadsheets. Since I had all the evidence and brought it forward, we were able to negotiate a deal. Mark would sign over the house and a good portion of his assets to me and the kids in exchange for cooperating with the authorities. He wasn't getting off scot-free, but he wouldn't be the primary target. If he turned over everything Curtis Underwood had, it was all very transactional. No screaming matches, just a lot of PDFs and digital signatures. The kids were confused, obviously. They aren't stupid. They saw their father moving into a small apartment across town. They saw the lawyers. Is Dad in trouble? Chloe asked me one night, while I was helping her with a history project. Dad made some very bad choices with money, I told her. He's dealing with it now. Is he going to jail? I don't know, honey. But he's not living here anymore. She just nodded and went back to her laptop. She didn't ask anything else. Honestly, as long as the Wi-Fi still works, teenagers can handle a lot. I actually got the router replaced that week, which felt like a genuine win. The old one kept dropping the signal in the upstairs bedroom, which was a nightmare for her Zoom calls. About a month after the filing, I got a Life360 alert. I'd forgotten to remove Mark from the circle. He was at a courthouse, 2 counties over. A few hours later, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Mark. They got Curtis. The text said he tried to run. They picked him up at the airport. He gave them everything he told them. I was just an employee. I stared at the text for a minute. I didn't feel happy or sad. It just felt like junk mail. Good for you, I replied. Then I blocked the number. The final meeting was at the lawyer's office to sign the divorce decree. Mark looked thin. He was wearing a suit that looked too big for him. He didn't look at me when he signed the papers. He just kept his head down and scribbled his name. Mrs. Holloway handed me the folder. The house was officially mine. The assets were settled. The Thorne mess was now a matter for the federal government, and I was listed as a cooperating witness. As we walked out, Mark stopped me in the parking lot. Yvonne, he said, I really did do it for the kids. I stopped and looked at him. I thought about the 4 dead people in the iCloud folder. I thought about the $400,000 hidden in offshore accounts, while I was worrying about the budget for soccer gear and furnace filters. You did it because you could, Mark, I said. And you did it because you thought I wouldn't notice. He didn't say anything. He just stood there in the parking lot looking small. I got into my car and started the engine. I noticed my tire pressure was low in the rear left, so I drove straight to the gas station to fill it up. I stood there in the heat, listening to the hiss of the air pump, until it was right. The pump was one of those old ones that takes a quarter and barely works, and I had to keep feeding it coins just to get it to hold the pressure. I drove home, pulled into the driveway, and went inside. I went straight to the kitchen and took my collagen supplement. Then, I went to the laundry room and started a load of whites.